The monks have long adopted this posture of less is more in speech. They have all sorts of rules about when you can and cannot talk, set times every single day and every single week and throughout the year where it is all silence. During times of silence, they go so far as to carry a writing tablet around to communicate with each other, like, we need more salt. They write it out rather than talk. Again, not as like an uptight neurosis, but as a disciplined attempt to talk less. All your introverts are thinking, I should have become a monk or a nun. And maybe you are right, but too late now for some of you. But it's not just the monks. You know, we've been hearing a lot over the last few years, and I'm all for it, about how so much of Western literature is dominated by white men like myself, and the need to listen to the voice of women and people of color and people from Africa and Asia and South America. 100%, I am all in. And in the same way, we also need to listen to those from the past as well. As progressives, you know, a lot of progressives are guilty of what C.S. Lewis called chronological snobbery, the assumption that if an idea is newer, it is therefore better by default. It's a kind of evolutionary view of human history. And if an idea is old, therefore it's behind the curve or the arc of history. And when you read Christian writers from the past, really prior to the last 100 years or so, first off, you're struck by how intelligent and like the high level of consciousness. When I read Julian of Norwich or Augustine or St. Teresa or St. John of the Cross, they sound anything but behind the times, like far more sophisticated often than a Freud or a Jung or anybody I read today. But when you read writers from the past, from the way of Jesus, really prior to about 100 years ago, one very conspicuous difference between ancient literature and modern Christian literature is how much they warn us about what they call idle chatter. Idle chatter, which when you read about it, sounds a lot like what we call chit-chat or small talk. Followers of Jesus who came before us saw small talk as vain, egotistical, a kind of waste of time, a distraction from God, and a breeding ground for sin. Now, disclaimer, there is a type of small talk that is a form of hospitality. It is a way to love and welcome people into relationship. Social scientists argue the first 7 minutes of any conversation is just shallow banter, but it's not a waste because it takes that long for the human brain to feel safe enough for any kind of vulnerability. So small talk, when it's done well, is a way to kind of help people just relax and open up. A lot of women are, not to stereotype, but a lot of women are really good at this. They often start off a conversation with a compliment about another woman's hair or a man's hair or, a way that your earrings or your shirt kind of draws out the color of your eyes. On the whole, we guys struggle to compliment each other, and as a result, our conversations often lack depth. Meaning there is a type of small talk that is great, but far too often, our small talk is a breeding ground for gossip, slander, a put-down, character defamation, deceit, a white lie, exaggeration, a half-truth, boasting, kind of one-upmanship, sarcasm, power dynamics, and it is the cause of evil and not good in the world. So here are 3 reasons to limit our small talk. 1, when we talk less, we sin less. Or in the language of Proverbs 10, which is what all the monks quote on a regular basis, when words abound, transgression is inevitable, but the one who restrains his words is wise. Or in the words of the King James, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. As somebody who, a core part of my job is to talk for a living, I am living proof of that wisdom. There's no way around it. More talk equals more sin. And one of just the best ways to mitigate against sin in our life is just to shut up and talk a little bit less. 2, when you do talk, people will listen. When we overtalk, people tune us out. But when people discipline their speech, when they do talk, other people listen. One of our elders, Dr. Peter Quint, is by far the quietest of our group. He will sit through an entire meeting and often never even say a word. But when he does say a word, I listen. I will later, for days after, often replay what he said in my mind over and over and just kind of muse on it. It was said of George Fox, the original Quaker, that, quote, "the fewness and fullness of his words have often struck even strangers with admiration." That's the idea, fewness and fullness. Third, when we are quiet and listen, we create space for other people's voice to come out. For every person in a conversation who is a loudmouth, like myself at times, there are often 2 or 3 people who are shy. Some of that is just the result of personality, but some of it is because we dominate the conversation and don't create a safe place for people to come out as they are. When we listen and we ask questions and we make peace with a lull in the conversation or silence, we often draw people out of their shell and discover the beauty of another soul. I remember a number of years ago, a friend of mine said, in a conversation, I make it my aim not to be interesting, but to be interested. Not to show off and kind of manipulate people's opinion, but just to ask questions and listen and really love people in that way. And if we're honest, not all of us, myself included, can be all that interesting, but all of us can be interested.